Easy as 1 plus 1. Easy peasy. Neil Brownell, the crazy inventor, so positive that I can prove to you and your loved ones that you are absolutely amazing. I put it in writing. You're amazing, and I will prove it. What's the greatest love that anyone can show to another person? Well, it wasn't too long ago, and Lady Linda and I were walking down the sidewalk, and she caught an edge of the sidewalk, and she tripped and fell. And I just stood there and looked at her. I hear the word love all the time. I hear, I love my brother, my sister, I love my aunt, my uncle, my mom, my dad, etc. But what is the greatest love that you can show to another person? As you know, or probably do know, Lady Linda and I used to have a house cleaning business. And in this house cleaning business, for over 20 years, we went in and out of people's homes to the point that we became family. We were going in their homes every week or two when they were home, because most of them worked at home. And we had these customers, some of them, for the entire time that we were in the cleaning business. So that gave us a really unique way of seeing how other people's families worked behind closed doors. So my first question is love political? Is it religious? Is it race, as in skin color? Is it sexual orientation? Well, during the 20-some-odd years that we were in these homes and became part of the family, it ran the gamut of all four of those categories. We had literally devout communist, we had devout capitalist, we had Muslims, Jews, Christians, and Buddhist. And as far as the skin color goes, we had every skin color in the book. And as far as sexual orientation, well, we had everybody there also. And out of that entire group, every single family absolutely loved one another. So obviously, love is not political, religious, racial, or sexual orientation. So my next question is, well, then if it's none of those things, then perhaps it's taking care of one another. And if it is taking care of one another, what does taking care of one another mean? Well, as I said, every family that we were in, and we were in some of the most beautiful families you want to meet. It was just so wonderful to have that ability to watch the families behind the closed doors and see how they function. Every single last one of them, as I said, loved each other. But they did have different ways of helping one another. Because we were in the business for so long, when we first started, some of the customers had very young children. And we had them for so long that by the time we got out of the business, these young children were now young adults. We also had customers at the beginning that had young adult children. And when we got out of the business, these young adults were, mid to late 20s. And when we got out of the business, they were now roughly 50. We also had customers that the spouses treated each other differently between the houses. We had some houses where one of the spouses did absolutely everything for the other spouse. And the other spouse, when they were at home, just kind of sat in their chair or did almost nothing. And we also had other spouses that helped each other out. Also, when we got into business, we had elderly people that, well, elderly, they're my age now, I'm 66, so they were their late 60s, and we watched them grow into their 90s. Now, what does this have anything to do with love? Well, in the first scenario that I told you, where the parents did everything for the kids and made life as easy as they possibly could for those kids, by the time the kids were grown adults, the kids had no ability to take care of themselves. They were 100% dependent on the parent, and they are still living in mom and dad's basement. And this also is true of the young adults moving into the age of 50 or beyond. They couldn't take care of themselves when they were in their mid to late 20s, and they still cannot take care of themselves when they're in their 50s. In fact, they're still living in mom and dad's basement. They have no job and no prospects of any kind, and they are in their 50s. Also, with the couples where one couple did absolutely everything for the other couple, over those 20 years, we watched the couple, the spouse that did nothing. We watched that spouse little by little become chair-bound, literally chair-bound, because they didn't do anything. They didn't exercise. They did nothing. And so they became chair-bound, and some of them even wheelchair-bound. We had many of them that wound up getting hip and knee replacements. Some of them just the knee, some of them just the hip, and other ones had both. Well, the ones that got this, and they worked really hard to get back, well, they are back up and running and doing whatever they want to do. But these other people who just sit, the knee replacements, the hip replacements, never helped at all, because they never did what needed to be done for them to get better. In fact, I walked into one house, actually it's several houses, but I'm shortening this way down, one house, and I asked the person who's been sitting in the chair, "How are you doing?" And they said, "Oh, I'm not doing very good." I said, "Well, how's the replacements coming?" And they said, "Well, the therapist just isn't doing very much, and they're not doing enough." And I asked, "Well, are you doing any exercises on your own in between the weekly visits of the therapist?" And they said, "No, that's the therapist's job." These people are literally trapped in their own body. We have the one customer who sat in their chair for more than 5 years. That's right, 5 years. And the last I heard, this customer was still sitting in that chair. They are literally trapped in their own body. And then we had the customers where the spouses worked together and they helped each other and they grew together. And as they grew together, they had their own independent lives outside of their married life. And as far as the children go, where the parents challenged the children and they cheered them on. Well, these children now are young adults, and many of them have their own children. They're out on their own. They have decent paying jobs, and they're living their lives. So as you can see, all of the families cared about one another and loved one another. But are they showing each other the greatest love you can give to another person? Well, some of them were, and some of them were trying but not achieving it. So what is the greatest love that you can show another person? Well, I learned this when I was 9 years old. When I was 9, there was a beautiful summer sunny day. And so I went next door. Remember, I'm just 9 years old. I went next door and I knocked on the door to see if my friend Billy could come out and play. And his mom comes to the door and she says, "Did you hear? Did you hear?" I said, "Did I hear what?" And she says, "I was upstairs and the window was open, and all of a sudden I heard the most horrific screaming that I could have ever heard." I ran to the window and looked out, and right outside the window was a tree with a bird's nest in it. And this bird nest had a mother bird in it. And the mother bird was looking out down at the ground and screaming up a storm. Well, then she heard another bird on the ground, so she looks down and she sees a baby bird sitting at the bottom of the tree, screaming back at mom. And it wasn't too long after the little baby was just struggling up a storm, screaming at mom, being so angry, that the little bird started to fly. And it then flew away. Well, apparently, mama bird had thrown baby bird out of the nest and told the baby as it laid on the ground, "You fly or you die." You see, mama bird knew that she was not going to be around forever. She was not going to be able to protect her baby. So her baby had to learn to be self-sufficient and be able to protect itself. So the greatest love that any person can show another person is giving them the gift of independence, giving them everything they need in order to survive on their own. As far as children go, we know that as parents, that's our job. So we want our children to grow up and be self-sufficient, out on their own, able to protect themselves, take care of themselves, and their new family that they're building. But as far as a spouse goes, why would somebody want to build a spouse up to the point that they can survive on their own? Well, for me, it actually boils down to a few different things. Well, for one, it takes a great deal of energy to hold someone else down. I've already covered that in other videos. So for me, it's just too much work. I want life to be a lot easier than that, than holding somebody down. And also, when push comes to shove and you get yourself in a situation where you really need help, well, this person that you held down and did not build up to be independent probably will not even be able to help you. So that option is 100% out for me. Number two is if you build up your spouse, your lover, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whoever, and they are now independent and they can move on by themselves, and they do, well, to me, they were going to leave anyway. So you might as well find out now so you can move on to somebody who will return the love of having you be independent while you teach them to be independent. And number 3 is just that. If you teach your spouse to be independent 100% from you, and something happens to you or something happens to them, they are not lost. Also, if something happens and they stayed with you because of the way you treat each other, now you've got something really, really special. You know that that person is going to be there when everything is falling apart. But there are also times where you want to help, but you're asking yourself, should I help in this case? Well, ask yourself, if I was not here, could this person help themselves? If they can, then go ahead, help them. If you don't know the answer and you say, if I wasn't here, could this person help themselves? I don't know. Well, wait a little while and just see how it works out. And if you discover that they cannot be independent in that situation, then start teaching them how to be independent in that situation. This brings us back to the beginning of this video. Lady Linda and I were walking down a sidewalk, and when all of a sudden she caught an edge of the sidewalk and she fell, and I stood there and looked at her. Well, the very first thing that I was looking for was, is she hurt? Because if she was hurt, then obviously you gotta help her as much as you possibly could. But once I realized that she was not hurt, the next thing was, if I wasn't here, would she be able to get up on her own? So I just stood there, and it was just a moment or two when Linda was back up on her feet and she brushing herself off, and other than being a little embarrassed, she was fine, just walking down the street again. And I looked at her and I said, Linda, why are you embarrassed? And she says, because I fell. And I said, Linda, everybody falls from time to time, but do you realize that you are a 69-year-old woman who just took a very bad fall? You jumped up, brushed yourself off, and continued like a teenager. You are taking really good care of yourself. I am really proud of you. So understand that the greatest love that you can show anybody is the love of independence, the gift of independence. Show it to every person that you can. Help them be independent, and it will help you in return. Neil Brownell, the crazy inventor, you're amazing. People are good. You are good. And you're amazing. And I will prove it. We now have this in dyslexic form for people who need a little bit of different font and things. That's what I need. Discovered I was dyslexic many years ago and didn't have this tool. So now you have this tool for any and everyone. Thank you. We'll go into how to make a person or how to teach a person how to be independent in future videos. Thank you.